Ethiopia, a mysterious mountainous land in the Horn of Africa, birthplace of early Christianity, and a country of rock churches in the north and a large variety of tribes along the Rift Valley in the south. It is the oldest civilized region in Africa with more than 25 centuries of documented history. Addis Ababa is its capital. Within its center is the lavishly furnished Menbere Selassie Church, the final place of rest of Ethiopia's last royal family. It contains the Empress Menen, two princes, and since the 5th of November 2002, Emperor Haile Selassie, who, shortly after removal from power, died due to reasons that are in the main controversial. Outside the church is the grave of Sylvia Pankhurst, who supported Emperor Haile Selassie. Ethiopia's one and only large city is relatively young. It was founded at the end of the 19th century by Emperor Menelik II. Next, the National Museum. It contains the weapons and clothing of various religions and a copy of a remarkable discovery, Lucy, a prehistoric female skeleton. The nearby Lion Zoo has a long tradition, as it was once the home of the emperor's lions, important symbols of power. Addis Ababa, the new flower, soon became the booming center of the country, with a water supply system, electricity, post and telegraph office. Emperor Menelik had the Bete Georgis Cathedral built on one of the city's hills in order to commemorate the patron saint of the country's soldiers. Since then, each emperor has been crowned here. Following occupation by the Italians, the sacred building was restored. Orthodox Ethiopian Christianity has a long history and continues to affect the daily life of the people. The piazza is the central point for shared taxis and buses. It's located at an altitude of 2,000 meters above sea level. It's a lively place, continuously surveyed by Emperor Menelik. The Mercato is the biggest market in Africa. A huge area with lots of stalls that stock just about everything, a good place to bargain for a great deal. It has a marvelous ambience, full of character, rich aromas, constant noise, and intriguing sights. The elongated Masqual Adababa Square is also used as an arena that can accommodate 100,000. On one side is the Istifanos Church, a modern building, typical of contemporary churches. The railway line from Djibouti terminates here. And next to the station building stands an imposing monument that features the Lion of Judah, as the Ethiopian emperors were called. The spectacular mix of tradition and modernity is also demonstrated by way of entertainment. Music and dance often accompany dinner. The temperament of the people is characterized by wild rhythms. A combination of ethnic groups now represent Ethiopia's modern generation. Going north, we travel to our next destination by aeroplane. We cross the Amhara and Choke mountains and arrive in Ethiopia's highlands. We are greeted by a huge lake and modern airport. Bahir Dar is the main town of Lake Tana, quite well vegetated in contrast to the sparse highlands. Lake Tana is the largest lake in the Ethiopian highlands and is situated at an altitude of around 1,800 meters above sea level, and covers a surface of 3,600 square kilometers. This fast-growing city developed from the 16th century and is now the administrative center for the entire region. A prosperous and industrial city with a university and technical college. The statue of an Ethiopian warrior stands in the center of a circle of traffic. And two beautiful tree-lined avenues divide the city on the large lake. It's a hive of activity from dawn till dusk. Here, life is colorful and pulsating, and tourism is a growing industry. The city, with its palm trees and blue water of the lake, combine to form a veritable Ethiopian Riviera. The market also pulsates with life. Here, all the necessities of life can be bought, even if they are sold amid the dust of the road. On the outskirts is a traditional livestock market in which both goats and cows change hands. A huge war memorial commemorates those who lost their lives in the struggle against the Derg. The roads here are quite bumpy, but there's always something new to see. A small ferry takes us over the narrow Blue Nile that flows out of Lake Tana. On the other side of the river, a path leads over desolate lava rock along the Abe, as the Blue Nile is still known. Cattle herds collect here several times a day for water. The former splendor of this place is no more. The huge masses of water of the waterfalls of the Blue Nile have almost vanished due to the construction of a hydroelectric plant. Only during temporary switch-off can the fascinating sight of an endless wall of water be seen as in the past. The Blue Nile, one of 4 paradise streams. In a large bow, it flows down from the Ethiopian highlands to Sudan, and finally unites with the White Nile in Khartoum. The people here survive due to the river that has determined their lives since time immemorial. On many of its 37 islands, Lake Tana in northern Ethiopia is well known for its ancient churches and monasteries. Dega Stephanos is located in the center of the lake and contains one of the country's most important monasteries. On the summit, framed by walls and hidden under great trees, is the Holy Stephanos Monastery. In a small sanctuary, various mummies are preserved within glazed wooden coffins. Here, the remains of 5 emperors of various dynasties lie at rest. Plus, there are remarkable sacred treasures and masterpieces of Ethiopian art. Today, only a few monks reside here. Dek is the largest island and can be seen in the distance. 2 water towers and a bell tower of typical Gondar design protect the Naga Selassie church. 24 stone-like pillars adorn the outer ring of a path that leads around the church. The magnificent murals in the interior of the rotunda are among the most beautiful and most well-preserved of those that are known as the Second Gondar design. There is no altar, just a shrine, the Makdas, that is surrounded by painted walls, the motifs of which were often depicted as what could be called comic strips. Bible stories are told, and the Trinity is surrounded by purgatory to the journey to heaven. People celebrate outside the church. By boat, we travel to the south of Lake Tana, to the Zegye Peninsula, a romantic natural landscape, a splendid place where once politicians met. A narrow path leads through coffee and gesho bushes to a hill within a monastery area, at the center of which is the impressive monastery fort. Here, treasures were also protected, such as books and crosses. The history of the hidden island monastery is long, and most notably includes the hostilities of the Oromo tribe in the land of Shur. There, the emperor's fort was taken piece by piece from Shur back to the islands of Lake Tana, and the monastery experienced a new prosperity and became the seat of government. Close by to the south is the small island of Kibran. A plaque by the entrance gate indicates that females are not permitted to enter the monastery. This small monastery is one of the oldest in Ethiopia. Here in 1350, Abba Johannes of Shur settled and was eventually buried. One of the towers contained crowns, crosses, and books. Papyrus thickets surround the island monastery of Debre Mariam, a tiny, modest church. During the reign of Emperor Amda-Sion, this was part of a monastery, and Emperor Iyasu I decreed that a religious council be held here. The local people of Woyoto still use papyrus boats and live as in the past. The route leads northwards through a land of contrasts. Priceless relics of a once powerful, ancient, and religious civilization are set in a breathtaking landscape. Slowly, the suburbs of Gondar emerge, and stone buildings line the road. Gondar, a city of palaces and castles. Ethiopia in the 17th century. For the first time in the country's history, King Fasilides began with the construction of a walled palace. Until then, the emperors of that time took part in various campaigns during the dry season. Only in the rainy season was the court located within a camp. So, in the course of a century, a huge fortification was built, with several royal palaces and a number of churches. After Emperor Johannes, the son of Fasilides, followed a grandson, Iyasu I, who had a two-story palace built here. There is a high domed main hall, used mainly for formal events. The emperor's living quarters were far smaller. Dawit III, a son of Emperor Iyasu, had his palace built in the north of Fazil Gebe, protected by a 900-meter-long wall. There were caged lions. The archive is like a small castle. Art and culture made Gondar the religious center of Ethiopia. The former Turkish baths are now in ruins, but they were very much in evidence at that time and no doubt gave great comfort to those who used them. Under Emperor Bakafa, imperial power was consolidated for the last time. He too had a palace built within the Fazil Gebe. A final flowering of courtly power began at the end of the 17th century and attracted merchants from Europe, the Middle East, and the Arabian Peninsula. Just outside the center of the city, a sturdy wall surrounds a garden planted with trees, at the center of which is a castle and moat, the bathroom of Fasilides. It was situated in the middle of a large water basin in which the emperor bathed. On a hill in the town, Emperor Iyasu I had the Debri Berhan Selassie built, the monastery of the Holy Trinity on the Mountain of Light. The church was built according to the unusual religious form of a long-drawn Axiomite basilica. Simple images of Jesus, the Holy Trinity, and Our Lady decorate the external gallery. Wonderful murals adorn the interior, and the heads of angels on the ceiling bring to mind the souls of the beheaded. On another hill is the complex of Kuskuam, well protected beyond sturdy walls, with a Debre Tsehai church and the Emperor's palace. Stored in a small adjoining building are the final relics of those bygone times, and the remains of the Empress and her son. Next to it, the palace ruins. It was here that Empress Mentewab once resided when life in Fazil Gebe became too dangerous. Finally, the empire disintegrated, a fact that spelled the inevitable decline of the imperial city of Gondar. Three kilometers from Gondar is a little village and its huts, Falasha. The inhabitants call themselves Ethiopian Jews. They're descendants of the Jewish tribes who accompanied Menelik from Jerusalem. They're well known for their pottery. What once was a laborious route to the north of the country is now much easier. From an aircraft flying above the vast Simeon Mountains, below there's a bizarre world of incredible mountain canyons, mesas and cliffs. At an altitude of more than 4,000 meters above sea level is a fine landscape. with some unique wildlife, such as the Shellada baboon. The baboons can be observed at close quarters while they graze. These brown primates have lion-like manes and a friendly demeanor. The mountain tribes eat only grasses, flowers and seed. To satisfy their appetite, they must eat throughout the day. In 1966, this landscape became a national park. The mountains end abruptly in the north and become hill country. Soon, the aircraft touches down. At a modern airport that meets the needs of increasing tourism. Historic Aksum was once the capital of a mighty kingdom. On the site of two previous religious buildings, this ancient cathedral was rebuilt in 1665. Thrones constructed of stone have witnessed the coronation of various monarchs whose Ethiopian Orthodox faith from the 5th century on spread far and wide. From the Eastern Roman Empire, fleeing missionaries known as monophysites introduced the ancient Christian faith, which taught that Christ had only one divine nature. Eventually, the concept of a division of faith came into being, and Ethiopian Christianity developed independently. An enigma lies within a small chapel next to the cathedral. Here, a monk is said to protect the Ark of the Covenant, believed to contain the tables of the 10 Commandments which God gave to Moses. Aksum is also referred to as Ethiopian Rome, capital of the oldest Christian kingdom in the world, the largest outside the Roman Empire. The new cathedral was established in 1965 under Haile Selassie I, the last emperor of the Solomonian dynasty. It is one of Ethiopia's few religious buildings in which people gather to celebrate Mass, which lasts for several hours. In the new cathedral, a 600-year-old Bible forms part of its well-preserved treasures. Here, too, are colourful paintings of martyrs and of the Virgin Mary with the child Jesus. Around the huge church building, there are always a large number of believers. The ruins of Aksum are dominated by around 130 stelas. Obelisk-like monoliths of trachyte, a splendid sight. Others lie in pieces on the ground. The stelas of the Aksumite culture were created from natural stone, from which numerous grave sites were marked out. The idea of the grave as being the house of the dead led to the decoration of the stelas as a kind of living room. Thus arose the story stela. At the base of the collapsed stele tomb, entrances have been exposed on both sides. Only a few of the underground grave chambers are open to the public. On today's western periphery of Dongur lie the ruins of a relatively modest complex, popularly known as the Palace of the Queen of Sheba. The Queen visited King Solomon in Jerusalem, who impregnated her, and later their son Menelik took the holy federal charge to Aksum. Next to the palace are the remains of the Gwudet Stele Field. Named after the Queen, who is said to have destroyed Aksum. In the north, the large water basins of Mei Shum are called the Baths of the Queen of Saba. They date back to Aksumite times and have been frequently renovated. On the hill above the town are the underground grave chambers of King Caleb and Gebre Maskal. Although little remains of the former capital of the Aksumite kingdom, Ethiopia's holiest site, it continues to be a place of mystery and legend. East of Aksum is the village of Yeha. A new church crowns a small hill. There are traditional images and decorations on its exterior. The small adjoining museum features various crosses and paintings, plus a number of ancient texts. The writings describe Yeha, a temple from pre-Aksumite times whose ruins are located next to the church. Ancient Southern Arabic text that predated Ethiopian text explains that this temple was dedicated to the moon deity of Alakar. About 3,000 years ago, people settled here and erected a pre-Christian temple that is the oldest in Ethiopia. The village life of today appears to be similar to that of bygone times. Little seems to have changed. In this ancient country. Now along the historic route returning south, our flight passes above the foothills of the Simeon Mountains and to the Danakil Plain. Again, an airport in the middle of nowhere. In the mountainous highlands of Ethiopia, there's an extraordinary treasure of the history of mankind. The 11 rock churches of Lalibela. In the 13th century, the famous Amhara sovereign Lalibela decided to establish a new Jerusalem in his kingdom. The World Redeemer Church of the House of the Holy Saviour is situated at the highest point of the steep Lasta Mountains. These monolith churches were completely carved out of the rock. Then the masons worked on both the external and interior design, from floor to ceiling. Domes, windows, doors and pillars gradually developed. Even today, pilgrims and visitors are deeply touched by their unusual atmosphere. Lalibela was the most important king of the Zakwe dynasty, in whose honor the old capital of Roha, located in the secluded mountains, was named. He was the one who, as a boy, was chosen by a swarm of bees to be king. The colony gently enshrouded him like a cloud without stinging him, a heavenly sign. A maze of paths and tunnels carved into the rock connects the first group of churches. This, the Beta Mariam, the House of St. Mary. In the center of an underground courtyard is a monolith church. Its various entrances, external walls and water basins are of Aksumite design. It is believed that Bete Mariam was the first building of King Lalibela's rule. The external pathways are narrow and difficult to negotiate, and in each small niche live priests and monks who tend the churches. The various caves and chapels each have a name, such as Adam's Tomb and other biblical names. The route leads back to the surface, down the mountain, and passes the traditional village of bee huts. Next, and seen from above, the most beautiful church of all in the form of a Greek cross, Bete Georgi, that commemorates St. George. Isolated from the other churches, it lies hidden in a deep shaft. According to legend, in New Jerusalem, the valley of the river Jordan was designed to separate two groups of churches. The double church of Gabriel and Raphael belongs to the second group. Again, red tufa corridors and bridges lead to the holy places. At first, from a corridor, only the facade is visible because the churches are hidden within the rock. Inside is a small central area. Winding and narrow, the route ascends to the world above, from where Bete Emmanuel is seen in all of its glory. The church's interior was carefully hollowed out and carved into arches, pillars and ornaments from floor to ceiling. Again, narrow paths lead to the next church. For more than a generation, many skillful stonemasons from Jerusalem and Alexandria carved out this eighth wonder of the world from the volcanic rock of the plateau. Around 6 kilometers from Lalibela, a strange-looking rock wall that contains a long crack catches the eye. As was customary in Ethiopia, a church was built here within a secure cave, mostly by hermits and holy men. However, according to local legend, this cave church was built by King Neakuto-Leab, the last king of the Zagwe dynasty. The architectural-like paintings look extremely ancient, the reason why they are estimated to be older than the rock churches of Lalibela. In 1268, King Neakuto-Leab was forced to hand over power to the first emperor of the Solomonian dynasty, Yakuno Amlak. Precious treasures, such as an old leather Bible and numerous crowns, are in good condition. Historic evidence of deep faith. The remote and isolated mountain village of Lalibela is located at an altitude of 2,500 meters above sea level on the slopes of the Lasta Mountains. On market day, people travel here from far and wide for both business and pleasure. Early in the morning, the first merchants arrive with their animals and goods so that they can find a good spot on the sandy slopes. Then they bargain, sell and carry. A typical market day. The beautiful mountain landscape of Lalibela is ideal for various excursions. We frequently encounter small villages with circular straw huts, the harvest being left to dry on the ground outside. After about 15 kilometers, we reach Gernata Mariam, the only authentic monolith church near to Lalibela. The church resembles that of Bete Medan Alem. The paintings in its interior are quite splendid. In addition to beautiful ornaments, they feature angels and saints, as well as elephants, horses, and other wildlife. Small windows allow little light to enter the church, in which priests stand guard with their religious symbols. There are few roads in Ethiopia. Vehicles are only used for the transport of goods. On our journey east, we cross a savanna and occasional bodies of water. This is a tectonically sensitive zone of Africa's Rift Valley. Awash is a settlement on the far edge of the nature park of the same name, inhabited by the Efa, a proud and independent tribe. On market day, people from the surrounding area meet here. For the Efa, life is hard, and only the strong survive. Corn, tobacco, dates and cotton are the main trading products of this region. Dromedaries, sheep and goats are bred, and here pastureland is often the subject of heated disputes. Located between Addis Ababa and Djibouti is Ethiopia's oldest national park. Close to the main entrance, a lion welcomes visitors to the headquarters of the Awash National Park. A small museum features the bones and horned skulls of various animals. The Awash Falls Lodge is close by, and the route leads to the southern border of the park. At first sight, the enclosed area looks like a small village of the Efa tribe, whose small huts are covered with the grass of the savannah. The view of the waterfalls of the river Awash is a wonderful spectacle, right outside the huts. The various tributaries of the river plunge down 100 meters and collect at the bottom in a broad canyon. Even during the dry season, the masses of water race down from each side into the depths below. The Awash is Ethiopia's most important river. It has its source south of Mount Wake and flows into Lake Gagori. With a total length of 1,200 kilometers, the Awash travels between the Ethiopian plateau and the Amar Mountains to as far as the Djibouti border. In the 1960s, the park was inaugurated by Ethiopian Emperor Haile Selassie. a natural landscape with protected fauna. It measures 850 square kilometers and is located 900 meters above sea level. Beneath the scorching hot sun, oryx antelopes and warthogs roam proudly across the savannah, continuously in search of food. The meaning of the name Awash in the language of the Oromiffa is very descriptive. The beast that devours everything in its way. Anubis and Hamadryas baboons roam in herds as far as the north. The extreme north of the park gradually changes from arid savanna to tropical-looking oasis. Suddenly, there are palm trees, and in between small brooks and waterholes that look like swimming pools. The Filwa Hot Springs. This unexpected natural paradise and its hot springs originated due to the nearby extinct Fantale volcano. In 1973, a large number of fossils was discovered in the lower Awash Valley. One of the world's most well-preserved human skeletons, with an estimated age of 4 million years, was discovered here and named Lucy. Various well-defined paths lead through the park. The Awash National Park may not contain the rich fauna to be found in other parts of Africa, but for Ethiopia, it's a necessity for the conservation of nature. Our route leads further east towards Somalia, past large herds of dromedaries, and to the Ahmar Mountains. In the east is the historic city of Harar. The whole of the old town is surrounded by a wall with 5 of its original gates. In the highlands of Black Africa, Harar was one of the most important trading centers of the Islamic faith. A Muslim stronghold in Christian Ethiopia. Just beyond the old town and in front of the Shoa gate is the Christian market. With all the atmosphere of the 1001 Nights. Much of the 4-meter-high wall is still in good condition and was designed to protect the city. Hostilities by the Oromo had to be repulsed when they attempted to take advantage of religious dissent in order to invade from the south to the highlands. Strangers were forbidden to enter the city. In the middle of the 19th century, British explorer Richard Burton, disguised as an Arab merchant, succeeded as the first European to enter this forbidden city. The magic of the Orient still exists here, and its many whitewashed buildings gave it the alternative name of the White City. The Muslim market is one of 2 small markets within the walls of the old town. Here too, colourfully dressed women sell their goods both day and night. Narrow streets travel up a hill to the centre of the old town. In one of the side streets is Rambo House, believed to be located on the site of the former home of the French poet. A splendid but bizarre construction of wood and brightly painted glass that is now a museum. Little is known of the time spent in Ethiopia by Arthur Rimbaud. only that he's traded in weaponry, and perhaps even with people. At the tender age of 19, he completed his literary life in France and travelled through Europe, Java and Cyprus, and finally through Aden to Harar. The narrow valley of artisans and merchants leads up a hill to the town. Life here is both colourful and noisy. In the Ras Makonen's palace is a library and small museum. When the Negus of Shur, subsequently Emperor Menelik II, removed from power the last sultan, he installed Ras Makonnen as governor of the then largest settlement in the Empire of Ethiopia. In central Feras Magala Square is Menelik Palace. And opposite, Medhana Alem Church. In Harar, the preparation of coffee is considered to be a traditional welcoming ritual by both rich and poor alike. Coffee is not only a beverage, but the focal point of an important social custom for strangers and friends. The city's flowering period is clearly visible on the journey to the Jamai Mosque. The original building of the Great Mosque dates back to the 12th century. Harar is a window to the past. Each evening when darkness falls, the hyena man, Yusuf, feeds his hyenas with camel meat in front of the city wall. In former times, the city gates were closed in the evening, and it was forbidden to venture out due to the danger of hyenas. They conveniently devoured the edible waste that was removed from the city. On the southern border with Kenya is Lake Turkana. Here lives the Turkana tribe, their most important possession being the camel. They know no frontiers. They follow the rain clouds. The Turkana live according to tribal tradition. Each man carries a stick, and both sexes decorate their bodies abundantly. The camels have no real material value for them, but they are vital sources of food that includes milk, meat and blood. The Omo Valley divides the Southern Highlands into two areas. On the eastern side is the Mago National Park, now home to the Maasai tribe. Due to their striking appearance, they are Ethiopia's most famous tribe. The cow is their most valuable possession, and sometimes they even hunt the hippopotamus. They tattoo and paint their skin with mud, create artistic hairstyles, and adorn themselves with necklaces and bracelets. Even today, young girls have their lower lip pierced in order to have inserted a circular piece of clay. On the western side of the frequently dried-out Omo River is the Omo National Park. Digging for water in the riverbed is the work of the women. as is also the collecting of firewood and the maintenance of the huts. The men of the Hama tribe go on a honey hunt. From high above in the trees, they smoke out the bees to obtain their precious honey. The small tribes continue to live according to their own laws, yet the number of nomads is diminishing. A journey through Ethiopia is also a journey through time itself, a land of rich traditions, religions, and myths. A country of legends and contrast that possesses one of the most colourful histories on the African continent.